This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. This must be nostalgic for Manchester City fans. The older generations telling their kids this is what it used to be like all the time, not just for a month, cruising at 3-0 up with 15 minutes to go. At least they waited for everyone to turn over before capitulating against Feyenoord. A different story in Lisbon where Arsenal dismantled the Amarinla Sporting. Could PSG finish outside the top 16? Another defeat, this time in Munich. Meanwhile, there's 5 goals for Leverkusen and 6 for a De Ketelaere-inspired Atalanta on a night when all the Italian sides won. And easy nights for Atleti and Barca. Also today, Mo Salah stops in the mix zone. Shock. West Ham win at Newcastle. Also a shock. Injury time drama between Hibs and Aberdeen. And might Barry be cast in Lost in Translation too? All that, plus your questions. And that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Nicky Bandini.
Morning.
And hello, Archie, Rhind-Tutt.
Baz's startled expression there about the Lost in Translation was beautiful.
It's nothing. It's neither big nor serious, but it's nice, and we'll get to that at the end. Matt says, do Manchester City have a 14-day cooling off period for Pep's new contract? Rich says, are we at the City have to stop playing the ball out from the back? They need to realise what a tough league this is and compromise stage. Man City 3, Feyenoord 3. Man City 3-0 up in the 74th minute before conceding 3. Here are some stats on that. Pep has never managed a team that's lost a 3-goal lead before. City became the third English side ever to fail to win a Champions League game in which they had a 3-goal lead after Arsenal Anderlecht in 2014 and Liverpool Sevilla in 2017. The first team ever in Champions League history to be leading a match by 3 goals as late as the 75th minute and fail to go on and win. City have now conceded 2 or more goals in 6 successive matches in all competitions for the first time since May 1963. Barry, you bravely nominated to watch this game when there were perhaps more tempting prospects on offer. What a choice. What vision, Barry.
Yeah. In my traditional role as a pod martyr, I said I'll just take whatever anyone else doesn't want. And this was the one people didn't want. And it turned out to be really, really good and quite funny towards the end. City were in total control against what looked like quite limited opposition. Feyenoord are only 4th in the Dutch top flight going into this game. And we're 3-0 down after 75 minutes when Haaland slid home City's 3rd goal, connecting with a cross from Matheus Nunes. The TNT commentator said what the rest of us were all thinking. And his quote was, "And Feyenoord are well and truly beaten now." So, I don't want to hang him or anything. He, as I say, it's what we all thought. He's going, 15 minutes left, this is it, At least they've got a confidence-boosting win ahead of this trip to Anfield on Sunday. But no, Feyenoord came back, capitalised on another Josko Guardiola mistake to pull a goal back, and you're going, that can happen. You're a bit worried about Josko Guardiola because he was responsible for 2 goals, coughing up 2 goals against Spurs at the weekend, and we saw the roasting he got from Ben Doak when Croatia lost against Scotland during the international break. And then he was responsible, I think, as well for giving the ball away for the 2nd goal. And Ederson didn't help him out either, letting a pretty weak cross get between him and the post. So Santiago Jimenez could chest the ball home. And then the 3rd goal was Ederson came to get a ball from deep, didn't get it. And brilliant cross from Igor Paixão to the far post, and David Hanko headed home. City almost spared their own blushes towards the end when Jack Grealish hit the post, but it was a total capitulation, and it was so bad that I would argue it's almost worse than the defeats they've suffered recently. And then Pep Guardiola appeared for his post-match interviews, and his head was covered in scratches, and there was a cut on his nose, so I'm not sure what happened there. Apparently he did it himself. So he might need to think about cutting his nails. So I'm not going to say City are fully in crisis, but I think they will be if they lose against Liverpool at the weekend. They don't often travel anywhere in fear, but I'd say their fans and possibly some of their players are worried that they could get absolutely battered at Anfield on Sunday. If they win, all will be rosy in the garden again, but if they lose or get battered, then, yeah, very much full-on crisis. And now 6 games without a win, 5 defeats and a draw, but I think it's important to remember the 3 games before this bad run started, they should have lost against Fulham, and they scraped wins against Wolves and Southampton. So it's been going on for 9 games now, this slump.
Yeah, I think Barry's right, Nicky. This does feel worse because it was at the stage where I was like, okay, well, this is done. I've got other games to watch. And it wasn't until someone in the WhatsApp group said something, I was like, what? What are you talking about? I was like, that can't happen. I flicked back, it was 3-3. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, and I think everyone was doing that a bit last night. Last night was starting to feel like, I would say across the board, one of those slightly low drama Champions League nights. There were a lot of games that were blowouts. There wasn't that many games that were feeling like they were really tight. And this one sprung up out of nowhere. And I think it's a double whammy, isn't it? Because one thing is the way it happened, which is obviously disastrous, being 3-0 up and then blowing it. The other thing is I just think that after 5 losses in a row, this is kind of the game that was circled on the calendar of, okay, but they'll win that one. They're going to win that one and that'll fix things. And they almost really needed to, because as Baz said, the next game after that is Liverpool. So if you can't fix it here, where do you fix it? And just to come back to Guardiola's post-game press appearance, you don't want to speculate too much because obviously it's stuff we don't know, but it is really extreme to come out and have that pressure on your head and you're scratching your nose, and he said he just cut himself on his nose, but it just makes you think, what level of tension are you at that you're doing that, and is that then transmitting to your team? There's no calm here. There's no calm at all if your manager's getting to that point.
You think about how much fun winning's meant to be, and you think about the amount of winning that Pep Guardiola has done, and then when you see somebody who has done all of that and the stress that is caused to him by not doing that, you think mid-table is more fun after all. Because you don't put yourself under that pressure. And I believe Pep Guardiola as well, that is self-caused. And given everything we know and hear about the intensity of this guy, it's not that surprising to see it take a literal physical toll.
I just want to stress that I think I phrased that really poorly. I didn't want to make it sound like I doubt that he self-caused it. It's actually exactly that he self-caused it that bothers me. Like, I think that seems like if you're at that level of tension, that's a bit of a scary level of tension.
There is that. Having stood before Pep Guardiola in an interview before, I can tell you that comes across, and your heart does skip a beat sometimes when you're thinking, okay, what am I going to deal with here in terms of a reaction? To City themselves, I was just looking through their results this season and furthering what Barry was saying. They've only really beaten one big team, and that's Chelsea on the opening weekend. They've drawn with Arsenal, they drew with Inter, Newcastle, lost to Brighton. I'm including Newcastle and Brighton in big teams there so as to avoid offence. Losing to Spurs twice as well. And this has been coming. And YouTube comments can be pretty uncharitable at the best of times, but seeing somebody chirp that San Marino have won more games in November than Manchester City really brought it home as to how bad things are for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and people have touched on this, and we've touched on it already, but it seemed like, I know Guardiola likes a small squad, Baz, but, they didn't replace Alvarez, right? Who scored a couple of, for Athletic. And like, even though nobody noticed him last season, he played more minutes than anyone else for City. That their squad seems so ridiculous to go, it seems thread. I thought they'd win the league as normal. They still might. But it does seem that is interesting, the squad thing. And the other thing is just what confidence does to footballers, even the best ones, right? That is just the psychology of it. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, well, Josko Guardiola is a fine young player, but you can see he's a bag of nerves at the minute, and he can't do right for doing wrong. And you imagine, do you pick him to play against Liverpool, when he's making all these mistakes? It's a bit of a gamble. And if you don't pick him, who do you pick instead? You put Nathan Ake in at left back, maybe? Obviously, they're missing Rodri. Gundogan is not the player he was when he left City. They're missing Ruben Diaz. He's a big loss, I think, as well. I mean, Pep got pelters last night. Well, not pelters, but he got some criticism for making 3 changes just before the 70-minute mark. Brought on James McAtee, Kevin De Bruyne and Simpson Pusey, and took off Foden, Gundogan and Ake. But, they should be able to close the game out. They're good players as well. They are suffering from injuries, and confidence has bottomed out and will get worse with each bad result. And I'd say Liverpool are rubbing their hands together now at the prospect of welcoming them to Anfield on Sunday.
And actually, Nicky, they're not in the top 8, they're 15th, right? They've got Juve away and PSG away. We'll get to PSG, who aren't great either, and Bruges at home. But, they could lose the first 2 of those. I mean, they could lose to Bruges for all we know. That PSG game could be enormous. For them to, even to not get in the top 8 is a huge story, but could even fall out of the whole thing.
I think it's pretty unlikely with 8 points they drop out of the whole thing. I think actually they probably have enough points already not to drop out the whole thing. But having said that, you just mentioned PSG, and I guess we're going to get to them at some point, but they lost again this round, and they are currently not even in the top 24. So for certain, that game for PSG is going to start to be a game they have to win. And the other thing with the 9 to 24, which bears repeating sometimes, is that is going to be seeded. So if you end up in the bottom half of that, you play one of the teams from the top half. So these things have got knock-on impacts for certain. It does feel a bit like that's almost down the line of things to worry about for City right now. The thing to worry about for City right now is, I mean, it's melodramatic to say, will we ever win another football game? Because of course they will. But after 5 losses and a draw, I think from a psychological standpoint, you do start to feel like that a little bit. When's it going to happen? When are we going to turn this around? I mean, of course it's going to happen at some point, but whether it happening against Liverpool at the weekend, I'm pretty sceptical, at which point it would be 7 games without a win. That's a pretty catastrophic run for a club, not for any other club necessarily, but for a club with City's expectations. Yeah, that's really, really a problem.
Yeah, and actually, Archie, we quite often talk about that psychology of championship teams who've won week in, week out, coming up to the Premier League and having to get used to not winning every week and sort of maintaining the spirit and all those things. There will be no one at the club who knows what's going on. like literally nobody there. They'll just won't know what they've never experienced.
Pep will look like Freddy Krueger in his post-match interview at Anfield.
Wow. It's sometimes you see it when teams who aren't used to it get into a relegation scrap and their players aren't used to scrapping. It kind of reminds me of what happened to Leicester when they went down with what was, the likes of James Maddison and such, where you were thinking, these players are more than good enough. Why are they stuck in a relegation scrap? So yeah, I agree with you on they're having to get used to what is a very unfamiliar challenge. Just a word on Feyenoord from their perspective. Wow. Brian Priske, their coach, did a really good job at Sparta Prague before. I was out there covering their game against Rangers, and he was talked of very highly there and had a bit of a difficult start at Feyenoord. And in the last round, they lost to a Salzburg team that had previously lost to everyone else. So you're wondering, okay, how much good is there in this Feyenoord team? But to have the resolve to come back and to really sniff out the opportunity where everyone has written them off, probably before the game even as well, apart from Barry in the WhatsApp group, then it's actually really quite impressive for them to complete this turnaround, and I think it adds a little bit more credit to his reputation.
Yeah, and actually, if you're one of those Feyenoord fans, that equaliser is where you are in the stadium, and the fact that it's not one that just sort of comes out of nothing. There's he's going to get it past Ederson. He's got it. He's still got to cross it like Pashao, wasn't it? And you're just thinking, there are so many moments, like the build-up of this is happening, then it happens. Absolutely brilliant. I did like...
There was drop.
Yeah. You talked about the press conference. I don't often watch them. God, can't the journalists ask shorter questions? And maybe I ask very long questions. But crikey, like there's this one guy, and there's an amazing guy called Boris who just went, any positives, Pep? I mean, it was a longer question. I was like, I don't think this is the time. I did text one of my oldest friends is a Man City fan called Matt Walsham, who I messaged glowingly after the Spurs game. I just said, this must be nostalgic for you. He did say that back in the day, he would have dreamed of chucking away Leeds in the Champions League. So, like, it is true. They've progressed since the Brian Horton years. Let's go to Sporting Arsenal. 5-1 win for Arsenal. I suppose Sporting might be feeling a bit sad in a post-Amorim world, but they've got a 100% record in Primera Division. They were unbeaten in the Champions League going into this game. And Nicky, Arsenal blew Sporting away in that first half.
Yeah, it felt like there was one of those almost like disconnects between the feeling of the atmosphere and the fans and being up for this big occasion and things that definitely shouldn't have gone on, like fireworks going on over David Raya's head, and then even the response and how loud it got when they pulled it back from 3-0 to 3-1 at the second half. It felt like everyone at Sporting around the club was so up for this. And then on the pitch, the team just wasn't ready for what was coming at them at all. I think that it was really, really good performance from Arsenal and a real reminder of quite what a difference Martin Odegaard makes in the team, which we've been getting to come back. But the connections between him and Saka and Timber down that right-hand side were just really, really nice to watch. They were really beautiful football, and I think you could see how Sporting were trying to keep a particular eye on Odegaard, and I think it was Marita kept going over to him and trying to follow him, but the spaces that created for the other two, and in particular Timber at times, Arsenal, when everyone's there and it's all clicking, they know how to exploit that.
Yeah, totally. And actually, Nicky, when you look at the City game and, Feyenoord pull one back and City collapsed, when Sporting scored that goal, you did think for maybe 5-10 minutes something could happen here. And they were really good after that. Yeah,
Sporting had chances in the second half. Sporting definitely had a few. I think it was noteworthy how little of the best of it went through Gyökeres after how much we've been talking about him recently, what a talented footballer he is. I think Gabriel really did a fantastic job on him, and of course did his celebration after scoring in the first half as well. And I don't know, I was reading one article this morning saying maybe that was a callback to 2023 when I can't think who it was. One of the Sporting players did the Granit Xhaka celebration after knocking Arsenal out, and whether it was that much of a callback or if it was just an on the night moment from Gabriel. I don't know. Footballers can be quite petty, so I think it's possible it really was a callback. But yeah, I thought Gabriel really did a great job on him all night, and it was notable that the one time he nearly did score, Gyökeres, was after Gabriel goes off and he's got Kivior in front of him instead. So excellent defending from Arsenal, which hasn't always been there this season. We know they're capable of it, as well as just some brilliant football going forward. I mean, Martin Odegaard, it's an odd thing to say, and I always think this so-and-so is underrated conversation is overdone and done with so many players. But it did feel like when he went out, there was this great response of, well, they should be able to deal with it, which is always a thing you can say. You should always expect the best teams to have depth and deal with things. But at the same time, the very best players in the world are hard to replace. And I think we maybe don't necessarily recognise him in that bracket when we could.
I think what you say there about Odegaard, I'd extend it to the fact that every team has a talisman. And I think we sometimes get caught in conversations of, are they a one-man team? And it's like, it's just a reality of top level teams in football that they tend to have people who they look to more than others. If you look at Real Madrid now, they maybe have one too many. You can see the balance of it, that it is important, and that's how top football clubs structure themselves. I think for Arsenal, this was a big result in terms of silencing some critics when it came to their away form. You look at what's happened at Inter and Newcastle and Bournemouth and even the draw at Chelsea to an extent. For them to go get such an emphatic win at a place where Manchester City were thrashed themselves last time is also quite a statement. So yeah, I think from an Arsenal point of view, also when there's been this criticism over the style of play, some of the goals they were scoring last night were really beautiful. So yeah,
worth pointing out that we did survive Monday's pod without our talisman, but boy, Barry did. It's good that you're here.
I listened just to confirm that I am indeed replaceable. And thought you did a fine job in my absence.
Yeah, it's like Rodri. Well, I can't see what he does, but actually, what does he do? I have no idea. But it turns out, I thought the way Odegaard and his balance and his move to win that penalty was so good. I mean, you'll be pleased to know, Nicky, that normally we get you on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and we've been yelled at by loads of Arsenal fans, but we haven't this time because they were brilliant against Forest. But as you speak on behalf of all Arsenal fans now, those
Arsenal
two,
fans.
you do those two results. They seem to change it, and actually, I think of all the people you bring perspective to all these.
You are allowed to invite me on other days, by the way. I'm willing to come on other days as well if you'd like.
Yeah, no. No. But like, it is true that those two results make the whole place feel different, don't they?
Of course. And I think it sort of needs to be said in the context of that City game we were just talking about. There's so many different contexts, right? The Champions League is one thing. Obviously, it's great for Arsenal. They've gone into the top 8 right now. When you look at the Premier League table, yes, Liverpool are pulling away, but City is still ahead of Arsenal in the Premier League table.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think any of those teams, including City, we've just been talking negatively about, are incapable of changing that because there's still 2/3 of the season left. And I think the fact that we've gone through these extremes of ups and downs already is a reminder that none of the clubs in the world are immune to that, and there's a lot of football left to be played.
Yeah, just to say, we'll talk about Mo Salah and the mix zone and his contract after on the pod tomorrow after Liverpool play Real Madrid. But that'll do for part 1. Part 2 will begin with Bayern's victory over PSG. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Bayern won PSG. Archie, you had this on the main screen. Was it worth it?
It was. It was.
Okay, good.
It was not as an entertaining game as Barry got. A bit jealous, but no. In all honesty, given where Bayern have been at, which is dominating in the Bundesliga, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to lay a glove on them, to the point that honorary president Uli Hoeneß was saying, one thing I can promise is the title, and Vincent Kompany was like, thanks, mate. Really appreciate that.
And Harry Kane as well. Harry Kane going, please don't say that, mate.
So you have that, but the problem is that in the biggest games, they've not really chalked up enough wins, and particularly in the Champions League against Barcelona, coming out on the losing side against Aston Villa as well. So for them to get the win and to continue to show the intensity and energy that they have under Vincent Kompany was a positive. That said, PSG did have their moments, but the thing is that such is the way that Bayern play, they force you to fit into such fine margins when it comes to the chances that they'll give you, that they come at such speed that you have to be so on it to take them, which is a credit. PSG did have a few good moments, except when Ousmane Dembele picked up his second yellow card and was sent off with around half an hour to go. That
bit unlucky. Silly challenge, but unlucky.
A little bit, but it's quite rash, I'd say, and you can understand where Istvan Kovacs, the referee, was coming from. But from a Bayern perspective, given there had been question marks about the defence and Min-Jae Kim and Deo Upamecano working well as a tag team, and Vincent Kompany had been saying before this that sometimes defenders and goalkeepers need 10, 15 games to get the credit that forward players get, and that they have really, in the last few games, I think it is difficult for them to get the credit because the standard of the opposition they faced is not as good as PSG. But overall, I thought they did pretty well last night as well. And the one question mark I have over Bayern is that for all of this dominance that they have on the ball, do they do enough with it going forward? And that would be, I would say, my worry for them later in the competition when they're facing sides who are going to be perhaps a little bit more clinical in transition against them. But for now, big result for Vincent Kompany and for Bayern to get back on track in the Champions League.
Archie is someone who watches more Harry Kane than most now.
I know where this is going.
How's he going? I mean, like, he broke another record, didn't he? And one of his goals, like, someone said he's recreated the Bundesliga symbol, like his legs are so high or something. So he's what was the record that he got?
His third hat-trick of the season already.
Oh, I thought it was like
fastest to 50 Bundesliga goals as well. I kind of lose count of them because there's so many.
Of course. So it's ludicrous that, or is it ludicrous that there is, England should move on from him. He's a flat track bully, etc., etc. As someone who's watching him all the time, what do you think?
I had one or two German reporters coming to me being like, what's this debate about Harry Kane in England, about him not running enough? And I understand why they say that, those in Germany here, because he does not shirk away from putting in a shift for Bayern. No one does. This is why they are so successful, is actually defensively against the ball. We talk so much about the attacking flair of Jamal Musiala and Kingsley Coman, but last night, the way that they hunt the ball down and win it back as a team, and Harry Kane is included in that. And Harry Kane is picked out by Vincent Kompany for, even when they are a few goals up, how he'll still be herring down after a ball in their own half. So it speaks maybe to more of an international structure problem, I think. And Harry Kane has said himself that, look, he doesn't really pay that much attention to the criticism, and that he feels like he's in the best form of his life. And to be fair, that goal you mentioned as well, like, before I was thinking, he's just tucked away another 2 penalties. What, we can all do that. Not everyone can do that. Where a cross comes in, and as you say, the athletic ballet that he's able to create there, not many people can do that and then nod the ball in. And even if Thomas Muller was taking the piss out of him in the celebration, albeit Thomas Muller does that with everyone, so it's not really anything special. It is something that he has been so clinical in front of goal. And actually, Jamal Musiala even was doing an impression of him recently. When Jamal Musiala scored a hat-trick against Mainz in the Cup, he was like, "Oh, look, I'm doing a Harry Kane. Here's the match ball. Ha, ha, ha." If people are taking the mick out of you like that,
well, they know their jokes, don't they? It's almost as good as the CBS lot, aren't they? Well, Barry, how do you feel about PSG sort of perhaps, the new format and what it does for a PSG capitulation?
Largely indifferent, because this is a different PSG, a younger, Galactico-free PSG to the one we all love to see crash and burn in previous years. I'm surprised by how badly they're doing, and there is a real danger, which we sort of flagged up 3 or 4 matches ago, I think, or maybe 3 matches ago, that they could be a high-profile casualty in this early league format, and that's the way it's going as things stand. They still have to play City, as we mentioned, although that may not be as taxing an ordeal as it once was. I haven't made a note of who their other 2 games are.
It's Salzburg and Stuttgart away,
Right.
both of whom currently at the moment also in that non-qualifying section. But
yeah, so they'll be tough games, and there is a very good chance they could go out. But I think if that does happen to them, people will make a much bigger deal of it than it actually is.
Right. Okay. Let's move on. Leverkusen 5, Salzburg 0. Chris says, so we reached peak handball madness with that penalty in Leverkusen. Kill me now. I mean, if you haven't seen it, it bounces off the player's knee or foot and it just hits his head and hits his elbow. I cannot believe that we're in a state where that is a penalty, but I'm literally yelling at nothing now, not even a cloud. It's just air. I'm just middle-aged man yelling at air.
Honestly, as soon as I saw that penalty incident, I was like, "Oh, Max is gonna love this."
Oh, God. Very easy win for Leverkusen. Florian Wirtz's second goal, that's what I want to talk about. He's got, I don't know if this is fair, Archie, when I see he's got sort of grace and scruffiness at the same time, like a sort of Berbatov-Claridge combo. That's how I...
Where have you plucked Steve Claridge from with Florian Wirtz?
He's the ultimate scruffy. He's the ultimate scruffy footballer. But I mean, Wirtz may be operating at a slightly higher level. But I won't hear Steve Claridge criticised, please. But do you know what I mean? Like, he's so graceful, but he's also got a kind of, it's scruffy at the same time.
I don't see the scruffiness as much as you.
Fine.
I
Okay.
think that
That's fine.
he
Yeah,
does
that's fine.
have this way of manoeuvring the ball in tight corridors of space that is really impressive. And I don't know, the most Steve Claridge-like thing I can think about him, and this is an assumption on Steve Claridge's part, is he's been mocked a little bit in Germany because of this infamous TikTok video where you're asked to rank things from 1 to 10, and they're going through different types of potato, like, where do you put fries, where do you put this? And he put normal potatoes at number 1 above everything else.
Yeah, oh, good.
So,
well, it's a good point, actually, isn't it, when you think about it? Because without the potato, you can't have any of the formats of potato, can you?
I shouldn't have encouraged you on this. I was like, I'm going to get back to the foot. No, it's stupid. Yeah. The nonchalance that he has with his skill, I think, is one of the things that enables him to be so good. And he is the undoubted star of this team. They have been underperforming overall in the Bundesliga, but understandably, I think, after what they achieved last season. And I think part of it has been them trying to get their heads around what exactly they achieved. And then similarly to what you're saying with Man City, when things go wrong, they're just not used to it, because when they scored first in 26 games last season, they won all 26 of them in the Bundesliga. So how do you deal with adversity? They're having to relearn that. Their big game in the rest of 2024 comes next Tuesday away to Bayern in the DFB Cup, which could turn their season around and put a different slant on it, and could also do the same for Bayern. But yeah, Leverkusen have been struggling with some injuries recently, still don't look quite as good as they were last season. Granit Xhaka has been off form a little bit as well, but Xabi Alonso is still finding his way, playing 3 central midfielders, which is something that he didn't really do last season. Again last night, but working out very well. Lovely free kick from Alejandro Grimaldo as well. Yeah. He has really nice. A lovely left foot. Salzburg, who are struggling actually quite a bit in the Austrian Bundesliga. They're 6th right now, which is un-Salzburg. Like, I know they didn't win the league last season, Sturm Graz did. But still, Salzburg don't quite look like the side that maybe you would have thought Pep Lijnders, Jurgen Klopp's former assistant, would mould them into. But I'm basing that mostly off Klopp's reputation rather than actually knowing what kind of a coach he was. So, yeah.
Well, and Steve Claridge, as producer Joel rightly points out, son of a greengrocer. So he'd pick potatoes. And it's the Football Weekly ultras will know. He's very good at eating fruit. Elite, absolute elite level. I don't know. We'll get Florian Wirtz to do it for the next live streamed show. Let's do the Italian teams, Nicky. Where do you want to start? Should we start with Milan's winner in Bratislava? I mean, I loved that dummy from... I mean, it wasn't a straightforward victory, and everyone else has found beating Slovan Bratislava quite easy, I think. But that dummy from Tammy Abraham, was it to set up Leao, that one? It was so nice.
Yeah, for the second goal. Yeah, it was a weird game. Milan were not good in the first half. Could have conceded before they scored through Christian Pulisic, then conceded a goal to Barshagian to make it 1-1, which was really a horrible goal to concede, because the goal they'd already nearly conceded was very similar on the counter. They really didn't look like a team learning lessons. In the second half, yes, some fun stuff. As you said, the Tammy Abraham dummy. Tammy Abraham scored as well. Leao, who had started on the bench, came off, and I think his introduction was just that little injection of quality that put them above Slovan Bratislava. But it was just not a particularly compelling performance, which is most of what Milan have been this season, has been not very compelling performances. It's so odd because they won the last round away to Real Madrid. But other than that, they've been mostly not that great this season. But it's a good result. It's going to keep them on track for, I would say, at least the playoff rounds now. And then that's probably what matters.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the consolation for Bratislava, Marcelli, absolutely welling.
Yeah.
It was so good.
I felt a bit sorry for them. They were a bit naive, but I feel this is a game they could and probably should have got something from. They were defending and then trying to hit Milan on the break. As Nicky said, they should have gone ahead, but for a brilliant interception by Pavlovic after the keeper had been beaten by Strelic. And then Strelic, just when it was 2-1 with this kamikaze back pass, he just didn't see Tammy Abraham lurking between him and the goalkeeper. I'm not sure how he missed him, but it was an early Christmas present for Tammy Abraham. Couldn't believe his luck. And then that brilliant left foot shot from Marcelli. And they're back in the game. There's a few minutes left, and Tolic gets sent off. He got penalised for a foul and booked, and it wasn't a foul.
Yeah.
It
was a tackle that would have started a break, wouldn't it? It was like
Yes. Yeah. It was a brilliant tackle. And then he got a second yellow for, I think he made a rude gesture or said something to the ref. So he got a second yellow, and that took any momentum they had away from them, and that was pretty much it. And our pal Guram Kashaya, their skipper, he got booked after the final whistle for dissent. But this was Slovan Bratislava's 13th game in this season's Champions League.
Right.
Yeah, so that the Real Madrid won it playing 13 games last season, and they still have 3 left.
Well, I'm not here to criticise referees, but if Guram Kashia thinks he was wrong,
yeah,
I agree with Guram Kashia. And he's one of those he's a real brandisher, a real, I'm going to sort of like puff my chest out, and I just thought, you don't need to book him there. That I sort of think there should be an appeal if you show dissent when the decision that you are complaining about is incorrect. There should be an appeal process because the injustice is just not fair, isn't it? Meanwhile, Nicky, Atalanta won 6-1 at Young Boys. De Ketelaere was so good in this game. Set up 3, scored 2. But as Abby writes, is Kolasinac the number 9 Arsenal fans have been crying out for? This is the moment where Said Kolasinac is suddenly through 1-on-1. You're like, what's going on? And then he just finished it, like he was Lewandowski.
Can I say as well, I was rewatching some of the goals this morning, just on the YouTube clips, and I maybe I missed it. I need to go back. I'm pretty sure this goal is just flat missed off the TNT highlights clip on YouTube. I don't know if that's the anti-Kolasinac propaganda in effect, or if it's just that there's literally too many goals this Atalanta team are scoring now, and they physically can't fit them all into a video. Kolasinac with the third goal. The whole team is just... They're so good, Max. They're so good. I really am excited to see where this run goes this season, because they're playing such good football at the moment. And you mentioned De Ketelaere, who has transformed under Gasperini. Of course, he had that miserable season at Milan where he just couldn't seem to fit at all, and he just needed a manager who was a bit more patient and was willing to fit around his talents rather than try and force a square peg into a round hole. But I also just wanted to talk about Matteo Retegui, who, after all of the conversations about how Italy couldn't find a number 9, of course, they found one who, at the time when he was called up to the Italian national team, had never lived in Italy and didn't speak perfect Italian, because he had lived his whole life basically in Argentina, but qualified through his grandparents, and now has come to Italy and had his first season at Genoa, which was sort of promising. But I still feel like when he signed for Atalanta this summer for, I think it was about 20-odd million euros, it was viewed as interesting, but not necessarily someone who was going to take over. And I think he's been so much better again this second season than what he was the first season. He's gone above and beyond. I thought his control, and I think it was the fourth goal, so his second goal, his control, his first touch, and then finish on that was just so good. I don't think he's ever going to be my vision of the best number 9 in the world, because I think he hasn't got that way of physically dominating opponents that somebody's not unphysical. He's got something there, but he isn't in my mind someone like a Victor Osimhen, who, as well as being extraordinarily technical, can use his body in a way to dominate opponents. But he's really looking like he could become a very, very, or already has become very, very effective penalty box striker for them. And it's just, again, this ridiculous Atalanta project that keeps being able to roll with, okay, no Skamaka, no problem. No Coop Miners, we'll let him, maybe our best player last season, go to Juventus, no problem. We'll just keep pulling out new players and playing even better than we did before.
Yeah, the Scott McGleish, the Argentinian-born Italian Scott McGleish. None of you know who that is, but he's a penalty box striker. His dad, Retegui's dad, I was looking him up because I was interested in him. His dad played hockey for Argentina. Apparently Arsenal are interested in him, not his dad. to sign Sean Curley as their number 9. Into a top of the league, Nicky. They beat RB Leipzig 1-0, an own goal. I mean, they created a lot more than this. Haven't conceded a goal yet in the competition.
Yeah, they're an odd picture right now, Inter, because they're clearly still a brilliant football team and very possibly still the very best football team in Italy. But there's something just not quite as impressive as it should be about them. And I was thinking that again last night because they were a lot better than Leipzig, should have had this result out of sight. Instead, in the second half, there were a couple of moments where Leipzig could have equalised, and that doesn't reflect well on Inter, whose goal was an own goal from a nice cross from Di Marco, but slightly coincidental, deflected in. And so it doesn't quite feel as good as it should. But then they've played 5 games in this Champions League group. They've taken 4 wins and a draw. They've scored 7 goals and they've conceded 0 goals. And so what more can you ask of them? Even as I'm watching them going, just doesn't quite feel as good as it could. It's as good as I think they can be. They haven't won all their games, but they haven't lost any of their games, and they haven't conceded a goal, and they've played City and Arsenal in that run. It's pretty impressive.
Baz, Barcelona beat Brest 3-0. Atleti beat Sparta Prague 6-0. What pearls can you give us from these two, please?
Well, the Atleti rout of Sparta Prague leaves Sparta Prague in 28th position in the table, leaves Atleti in 13th. I suppose the pick of the goals in this came from Julian Alvarez, who opened the scoring with an incredible free kick that he won himself.
Yeah, so good.
With a marauding run up the middle. And yeah, the goal, one of those free kicks where the keeper just doesn't move, fizzes it into the top corner from distance. And then his second, which put Atletico 3-0 up, was another marauding run from inside his own half. Played a give and go with Giuliano Simeone, who I guess is the boss's son. Yes,
son.
And then scored from a really tight angle. At which point Sparta Prague pretty much gave up. Anton Griezmann got a lovely goal with a shot in the turn from outside the area after coming on, and then Correa got 2, which basically looked like he was practicing a drill against some training cones. It was so easy for him. 2 of the easiest goals he'll ever get. And then Barcelona-Brest was pretty straightforward win for Barcelona. And Robert Lewandowski got 2 goals, one of which was his 100th Champions League goal. And I suspect there may be fallout from this game, which will not be related to the actual game, but CBS's bantertastic coverage of it, which was...
I can't.
Yeah, look, it's not for me to cluck sanctimoniously about other people being juvenile and puerile, but yeah, that really didn't land. It probably landed with some viewers, but it was toe curling. Because breasts are funny.
Yes, if you haven't seen it, that's basically Barry's described it pretty well there, I think. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin with West Ham's victory at St James's Park, and we'll get a Fulham minute in there too. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So on Monday night, West Ham won 2-0 at Newcastle. This is a huge result for Lopetegui, and I don't think anybody saw this coming, Baz.
No, because they beat Newcastle. Newcastle have been playing their best football of the season going into this game. They're obviously very good at home. West Ham have not been good this season. Their win against Manchester United was, gifted to them by a dreadful refereeing decision. And we don't really know how good or bad they are, and this game doesn't really give much of an indication either because it was so easy for them. Newcastle just didn't turn up. They went into this game on the back of consecutive league wins against Forest and Arsenal and having dumped Chelsea out of the Carabao Cup, but they were nowhere to be seen, and it was a weird performance from Newcastle. So many of their players underperformed or were nowhere near their best. Anthony Gordon, Joe Willock, Fabian Schär just couldn't stop giving the ball away. Bruno Guimaraes was bad. Lewis Hall, who we've all been raving about, had a bad game. Lloyd Kelly came in. I don't think he's played too often. Was he injured or just not been picked? I think he was might have been injured, but he wasn't particularly impressive either. And it could scarcely have been a more straightforward win for West Ham, who probably should have won by more. Newcastle fans who want something to cling to can probably say that they probably should have had a penalty at 2-0 down when Mavropanos brought down Callum Wilson, but they deserved to lose. They were nowhere near what they're capable of.
Michail Antonio's shirt was ripped and he had to get it replaced. According to Seb Hutchinson, friend of the pod, on comms, Michail Antonio has to have a specifically modified shirt to fit around his neck because it's just such a big neck that he needs a special bespoke shirt. That's incredible, isn't it? Sort of feel like he's just going to be trudging around up top for West Ham forever. Now, I just can't remember a time. The last time it wasn't him.
They keep bringing in people to replace him, and they're not cutting the mustard,
absolutely.
are they? So.
I'm sure the last player to play up front before him was Frank McAvenny or Tony Cottee. He's been doing it since then, hasn't he? West Ham fans olaying passes at the end. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's ever happened under West Ham in recent. It's the West Ham way, isn't it? Well, well done to Lopetegui then. Big win for them. Small Catty says, with Vicario injured, are you, Max, going to restart your campaign against Fraser Forster? Presumably you've spent the last months while he's been on the bench crafting new and vicious insults that you'll now share with us. So the news that Vicario played 60 minutes against Man City for Spurs with a broken ankle. The Italian Bert Trautmann. He's not quite Trautmann levels, but still. Fair play for doing that. But he's out long term, which I think is a real blow for Spurs. And you'll see it, Archie, when Fulham hammer Tottenham next game, as we're all expecting, as that is the way for Spurs. Can't remember what I had against Fraser Forster, but I very much hope he's absolutely brilliant for the next however many months. Give us your Fulham thoughts. Oh, yeah, you got hammered by Wolves. That was unexpected, but perhaps didn't tell the whole story of the game.
We did, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's not fun. So sometimes you read out comments on the pod where it's like, you're not covering my team enough. And I'm listening in and I'm like,
oh, yeah.
God, what are these people talking about? Until it happened to my team.
Oh, God.
Because Fulham Brentford.
Oh, really?
And you're like, we're going to talk about it. I was like, I'm looking forward to this. And then you're the only one who's watched it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, I remember.
I was like,
who are you throwing under the bus? Barry? Who else?
Barry, Philippe and Lars,
yeah,
I think.
Barry, Philippe and Lars.
Yeah, that was a shameful episode.
It was... Look, the difference is I still found it funny. But I just have to go back to that moment because it was a very important moment for us Fulham fans because Brentford are very chirpy and snippy towards us. And to turn around a game against them like that, I was writhing on the floor in front of my TV in celebration as my mate was sadly there to see, having about half an hour before saying like, I just don't really care about Fulham that much anymore. There's just something not there. And then that happened. But also the extra joy in it was the chance that Brentford had to win it at 1-1 in that crazy period before then, because it was Fabio Carvalho, a guy who left Fulham for Liverpool and then went to Brentford and is, as a result, amongst Fulham fans, persona non grata. So an extra little bit of sweetness and the kind of victory that we thought has made our season lift off. Yeah, and then the Wolves game happened. So, but
Well, look, this is great news for people who like their match reports
3 weeks on.
3 or 4 weeks after. Yeah.
Slow news.
I think most of them like, I can't remember this game. They're thinking, well, there we are. Dead Deer says, is this the turning point in Norwich's season? They hammered Wayne Rooney's Plymouth 6-1 yesterday. I did watch the goals, but there were just so many I couldn't really keep up. Steve says, how good was that fight back in CB5? Yeah, Cambridge down to 10 men. And 1-0 down against Bolton, and Sully Kai scored in the 89th minute. I didn't quite writhe on the floor, Archie, but I was absolutely delighted. And friends of the Euros will be pleased to know that Ryan Loft started and was quite like a tall centre forward until he was sacrificed for a defender when we were had a man sent off. But at least he got on the pitch. And Jim says, any time for a wee Fitbar corner to cover injury time in Hibs Aberdeen, including a friend of the pod, Elliot Ross, wanting a Sinclair scale mark for Esther Soklo's overhead kick. But some game this, Baz.
Yes, Aberdeen travelled to Edinburgh to play Hibs at Easter Road, knowing a win would draw them level with Celtic at the top of the table, albeit having played a game more. They go a goal behind to a Joe Newell shot that takes a hideous deflection, and then it's all Hibs until Aberdeen equalise and then go ahead 2-1 up through goals from Jamie McGrath and Nicky Devlin. Into added time we go with Aberdeen 2-1 up, and Nicky Cadden equalises in the second minute of extra time with an incredible free kick. It's 2-2. Aberdeen go 3-2 up in the 5th minute of added time. A brilliant overhead kick, as you mentioned, from Esther Sokler. I'm going to say 7.
Okay, maybe 8.1.
Okay.
It was quite in the middle of the goal. Okay, 7.6. You're right.
Yeah, so these are bonus brilliant goals in added time. And then Aberdeen think they've won, and Hibs equalised through Rocky Bashiri in the, I think, 7th minute of added time. Scenes at Easter Road. And just as an addendum, Dwight Gale and Junior Hoylett both play for Hibs. And if you knew that, go and collect a prize.
That's amazing. So the Aberdeen they've only got 1 point from the last 2 games. That means that Celtic are now 2 points clear with the game in hand at the top of the Scottish Premiership. Finally, this is from Peter. Dear Max and Barry. A question from Barry. Does he realise he was on Japanese primetime television on Monday the 25th of November at 8:45 p.m? See attached photo. He was talking about Peter Crouch. They had him dubbed into Japanese with an Irish accent. I hope he got paid. Love the show. Pete Lyons. I've lived in Japan for 23 years teaching English.
I'd really like to hear me talking Japanese in an Irish accent.
So there we are. It's from the Peter Crouch documentary, but there you are, Barry. It's in the WhatsApp group if you want to look at it. It's you with a lot of Japanese writing just across everywhere. But yeah, there you are. You're big in Japan, Barry.
All right. Well, I'm delighted to hear it.
And as producer Joel says, it's a lot like Homer Simpson finding out he looks like Mr. Sparkle. Anyway, it's a great picture. You should tweet that out, Baz, or not. You should blue sky it. That's where you are now. And thanks for all your questions. I'm still taking them on Twitter and Blue Sky. I get fewer betting odds. Instant guaranteed wins on Blue Sky at this stage. But, it's early days, isn't it? That'll do for today. Producer Joel has now put in one of these crawling, can we have some reviews? The last time he did this was because the top review was like something really rude, and so he just didn't like seeing it. So maybe there's another one. But yeah, if you can review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, 5 stars and a nice comment, please, he says. You can now comment on each episode on Spotify, which seems like a good way to get in touch with the show. Why not take a look there?
This sounds like when I get a big shop delivered to my elderly neighbour, and then I get an email from Asda, not just asking me to review the delivery, but each item that was in the delivery. And I'm going, really? How
can
much?
You just write, because it's for your neighbour. Can you write, didn't eat it, didn't eat it, didn't eat it? I mean, some people do have a lot of time on their hands. But yeah, maybe you'd like to review every sentence.
Could you review this bunch of bananas and these steaks? They were pretty much everything I expected.
Max, for you to say some people have a lot of time on their hands when your podcast is What Did You Do Yesterday?
Well, come on. But I mean, do I have a lot of time on my hands? I'll tell you this for nothing. I don't have a lot of time on my hands, and I'm going to have even less time on my hands in a month or two. So what I do think is, what the fuck did I do with my life when I didn't have children? Like, it's totally soccer in the glory years of Soccer AM, genuinely, for about 5 years, I worked a day and a half a week. I'm embarrassed. I didn't get a law degree, an MBA or something. I'm ashamed of myself. I don't know what I did.
What did you do? Did you drink?
No, I didn't think so. So I don't know. It's sort of shameful. I've nothing to show for it. I could have been someone. I could have done something. But it's too late now, isn't it? But life is full of regrets. Anyway, what a way to end. I hope you're all regretting something as you're listening to this. And that'll do for today. Thanks, Archie.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Nicky.
Thanks.
Cheers, Baz.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Phil Maynard.
This is The Guardian.